Okay, let's dive in. Today we're getting into something that's, well, absolutely critical for your future, personal retirement planning.
It really is.
Now, I know for a lot of people that whole area can sound super complicated,
Right.
like some kind of dense manual full of jargon.
Yeah, the acronyms alone can be intimidating.
Exactly. But trust us, getting your head around this stuff isn't just, something you should do. It's actually really empowering. We're going to try and cut through all that noise today.
Hmm.
Focus on the key things that can genuinely make a difference for you. We've been looking through some material that honestly lays out the basics really clearly, almost like a step-by-step guide.
It's quite helpful, yeah.
So our goal with this deep dive is basically to pull out those most important insights, help you feel a bit more confident, maybe ready to tackle your own planning.
And it's so important to understand this now, maybe more than ever, because the whole retirement landscape, it's fundamentally different than it was for, say, our parents or grandparents.
How so?
Well, for decades, many workers could count on getting a pension, like a guaranteed monthly check from their employer for life after they retired.
Right, the gold watch and the guaranteed income.
Exactly that idea. But that model, it's largely vanished for most people, especially in the private sector.
So the responsibility shifted onto us.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
The opportunity is there, but so is the responsibility. It shifted largely onto the individual to build that retirement security.
Hmm.
And because of that shift, the choices you make, particularly the choices you make early on, they have this massive, massive impact down the road.
Okay, that actually leads perfectly into our first big question. This one's for you listening.
Hmm.
If you could zoom forward 40 years, what do you want that financial picture to look like?
Yeah.
What does financial security and retirement actually feel like for you?
Thinking about that future really makes the case for starting early incredibly clear. The most powerful force you have working for you is compound interest.
Ah, yes, the magic of compounding.
It's often called the eighth wonder of the world, right? Because it's not just your money earning a return, it's the return itself, then earning more returns. It just snowballs.
It creates this accelerating growth, especially over long stretches of time.
Exactly.
And the numbers really illustrate this. The material we reviewed had this pretty stark example.
Hmm.
Okay, imagine someone starts saving $400 a month. They're 22 years old.
Hmm.
Let's say they bump that saving up by just 3% each year, and they manage to get a 10% average annual return, which, okay, is optimistic, but possible long term.
Right. It shows the potential.
By the time they hit 65, they could have over $4,080,000.
Huge number.
Now, here's the kicker. Same person, same $400 a month, same 3% increase, same 10% return, with just 10 years. They start at 32 instead of 22.
Okay.
By age 65, they end up with only about $1,847,000.
Wow. So waiting just 10 years.
Costs you more than half the potential outcome. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
More than half. That's a huge cost of delaying. Some people call it the procrastination penalty. You lose those incredibly valuable early years where compounding does its heaviest lifting.
Yeah.
It just hammers home why taking action now, whatever your age, is just so vital. But especially if you're in your 20s or 30s, that's when time is really on your side.
And it sounds like that move away from pensions you mentioned is a huge part of why we need to understand these other strategies now.
Yeah.
Can you maybe unpack that shift a bit more?
Sure. So, like I said, a pension was what's called a defined benefit plan. The employer promised a specific payout, usually based on your salary, years you worked there.
Right.
And the key thing was the employer took on all the risk, the investment risk, the risk you'd live a really long time, the financial risk to the company itself. It gave the employee amazing security.
So why did companies move away from that if it was so good for employees?
Well, honestly, they just got really expensive and unpredictable for businesses. People started living longer, markets go up and down.
Yeah.
It became a huge liability on their books. Okay. So the shift, especially starting in the 80s and really picking up steam, was towards defined contribution plans, like the 401k.
Right.
In those plans, you, the employee, contribute. Maybe the employer chips in too with a match, but you typically direct the investments and you bear the market risk.
Got it. So how common are those old-style pensions today?
Much, much less common, especially private sector. Only about 15% of private workers have access now. It was over 60% back in the 80s.
Big drop.
Huge. Now, they're still pretty common in government jobs. About 84% of state and local workers, teachers, police, firefighters, and nonprofits are kind of in the middle, maybe 30%.
Okay.
So bottom line for most people starting out today, especially in a typical company job, that guaranteed employer check for life and retirement, it's just not likely to be there.
Which makes understanding these other tools absolutely essential.
Exactly. Things like 401ks and IRAs, they aren't just extra savings anymore. For many, many people, they are the main way you're going to build your retirement nest egg.
Okay, so the game has definitely changed. Starting early is huge. Yeah. Let's talk about how most people actually start building this wealth now. It usually begins at work, right? With that. Alphabet soup of plans.
Huh. Yeah, the alphabet soup is right. And the most common one you'll hear about, especially in private companies, is the 401k.
Named after
Yeah.
a section of the tax code.
Believe it or not, yeah, Section 401k back in 1978. But just think of it as a special investment account you get through your job. It's designed for retirement savings, and it comes with some really significant tax perks.
Okay, like what? What are the big draws?
Well, first off, the money you put in often comes out of your paycheck before they calculate income taxes. That's called pre-tax contributions.
Ah.
So, say you earn $50,000 a year and you decide to put $5,000 into your 401k. Your taxable income for the year drops to $45,000.
So you get a tax break right now.
Right now, yeah. You postpone paying taxes on that contribution and, crucially, on all the investment growth it generates over the years until you actually take it out in retirement.
That's pretty powerful. An immediate benefit.
It is. But honestly, the most valuable feature, the one nobody should ignore if they have it, is the employer match.
The free money.
That's exactly what it is. It's free money. A very common setup is your employer might contribute 50 cents for every dollar you put in, up to, say, 6% of your salary.
Okay, so walk me through that. If I make $50,000.
Right. And you contribute 6% of your salary, which is $3,000.
Okay.
Your employer, under that common match, would add an extra $1,500 into your account, just for you doing your part.
So if your job offers any kind of match, contributing at least enough to get the full match is like, it's an instant return. Often 50%, maybe even 100%, depending on the formula.
Absolutely. It's like getting a guaranteed bonus just for saving, not doing it. You're literally leaving free money on the table. It's like taking a pay cut.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there a limit to how much I can put in?
Yeah, there are annual limits set by the IRS. For 2025, the maximum an employee under age 50 can contribute themselves is $23,500 per year. Though, realistically, the average contribution rate is much lower than the max. It's somewhere around 8% of salary, typically.
And employers actually have some clever ways to nudge people into saving, right?
They do, and these have made a big difference. Auto-enrollment is a big one.
Right.
New employees just get automatically signed up to contribute a certain percentage, maybe 3%, maybe 6%. You have to actively choose not to participate, to opt out.
And most people just don't opt out.
Exactly. Behavioral Economics 101, it dramatically boosts participation rates. Then there's also auto-escalation.
Which is?
Your contribution rate automatically goes up a little bit each year, say by 1%, until it hits a preset target, maybe 10% or 15%. It helps you save more over time without feeling a big hit all at once.
Smart ways to overcome inertia. But even with these, not everyone joins in.
No, unfortunately not. There's still a pretty significant participation gap. About 44% of civilian workers actually don't participate in an employer plan.
Wow, that's high.
Yeah, and it's more common among younger workers, part-time workers, and those with lower wages. It's a real challenge for, overall retirement readiness in the country.
Okay, so you're contributing, maybe getting a match.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you leave that job? Does the money disappear?
No, definitely not your money. The contributions you make from your own paycheck, that's always 100% yours right away. It's vested immediately.
Okay.
The employer contributions, though, the match money, that's often subject to what's called a vesting schedule. Meaning you gradually earn full ownership of the employer's money over a certain period. Like maybe you own 20% after your first year, 40% after year 2, and you're fully vested, meaning you own 100% of the match after 5 years. That's called graded vesting.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's cliff vesting. You own 0% until a specific point, like maybe after 3 years, and then boom, you own 100%.
So if I leave before I'm fully vested?
You might have to forfeit some or even all of the employer contributions. Your own money is always safe, though, and that money is portable. You can usually roll it over into an IRA or into your new job's 401k.
Got it. So vesting is definitely something to be aware of when you're thinking about changing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 401k is the big one. Are there others that work similarly? You mentioned the alphabet soup.
Yeah, there are several others that function in a very similar way as defined contribution plans. You'll hear about the 403b.
Okay.
That's very common for teachers, people working in public schools, hospitals, and other nonprofits. Then there's the thrift savings plan, or TSP.
TSP.
Yeah, that's for federal government employees and the military. It's actually known for being really good, low cost, and it has this nice feature of an automatic 1% contribution from the government plus a match up to another 4%.
Oh, nice.
There are also 457 plans, often for state and local government folks and some nonprofits. Similar contribution limits to 401ks, but they sometimes have unique rules, like potentially easier access to funds before retirement without penalty in certain situations.
Interesting.
And for really small businesses, those with under 100 employees, there's an option called a simple IRA.
Okay, so a lot of different names, but the basic idea is similar. You contribute, maybe the employer matches, and it grows for retirement.
That's the core concept, yeah.
Now, within a lot of these plans, and also when you're saving on your own, there's this really fundamental choice you have to make about taxes. This is the whole traditional versus Roth thing, right? It boils down to, do you want your tax break now, or do you want it later?
That's exactly the question. It's a critical fork in the road, and the right answer really depends on your prediction or maybe your guess about whether your income tax rate will be higher now while you're working or later when you're retired and taking money out.
Okay, break it down. Traditional first.
Okay, traditional account, think 401k or traditional IRA. You contribute money pre-tax, so you get that tax deduction today. Lowers your current tax bill.
Got it.
Your money then grows tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on the dividends or capital gains inside the account each year. The tax bill comes due only when you withdraw the money in retirement.
And then those withdrawals, both what I put in and the growth, are taxed.
Correct. Taxed as ordinary income in the year you take them out. So tax break now, pay taxes later.
Okay. Now, Roth. How's that different?
Roth is basically the mirror image. You contribute money after you've already paid income tax on it, so no upfront tax deduction. Your paycheck feels it a bit more today.
Right. No immediate tax savings.
But here's the big payoff. If you follow the rules, basically, hold the account for long enough and withdraw after age 59 and a half, all your qualified withdrawals in retirement are completely 100% tax-free.
Tax-free, including all the growth.
Including all the growth over potentially decades. That's the huge advantage. Pay taxes now on the seed, get the entire harvest tax-free later.
Wow, okay. So how on earth do you choose? It sounds like crystal ball territory, predicting your future tax bracket.
It kind of is, but we can make educated guesses. The source material had a couple of really good examples that highlight the thinking.
Okay.
Think about, let's call her Sarah. She's 22, just starting her career, making maybe $45,000 a year.
Okay, lower income bracket.
Exactly. After her standard deduction, her taxable income might put her in the 12% federal tax bracket. Pretty low.
Right.
For Sarah, making Roth contributions often makes a ton of sense. Why? Because she pays that relatively low 12% tax rate on her contributions now.
Okay.
But remember that compounding example. Over 40 years, her contributions could grow into a really substantial amount. With the Roth, all of the contributions and all that growth comes out completely tax-free in retirement. She's essentially locking in that low 12% rate today to avoid potentially much higher taxes on a much bigger pot of money later.
Okay, that makes sense for someone starting out. Now, what about the opposite? Someone mid-career higher income?
All right, let's take David. He's 35, maybe making $120,000 a year. He's in a significantly higher tax bracket. Let's say his marginal rate, combining federal and maybe state taxes, is around 28% or 30%.
Okay, much higher tax hit on current income.
Exactly. For David, the immediate tax deduction from a traditional 401k contribution looks pretty appealing. If he contributes $10,000, that could save him maybe $2,800 or $3,000 in taxes this year. That's real money back in his pocket now.
Yeah, that's significant.
And David might also reasonably expect to be in a lower tax bracket when he retires. Maybe he plans to live on, say, $80,000 a year drawn from savings and Social Security. His actual taxable income in retirement might be lower than $120K, potentially putting him back into the 12% or 22% bracket.
So he gets the big tax break now when his rate is high, and pays tax later when his rate might be lower.
And that's the logic for the traditional choice in his situation.
But like you said, nobody knows what tax rates will be in 10, 20, 40 years. They could go up, they could go down.
Precisely. That uncertainty is exactly why the concept of tax diversification is so smart.
Meaning, having some of both.
Yeah, having money in both traditional tax-deferred accounts and Roth tax-free accounts, it gives you flexibility in retirement. If tax rates turn out to be really high, then you can pull money from your Roth accounts tax-free. If rates are lower than you expected, you can pull from your traditional accounts and pay the lower rate then.
So you're hedging your bets against future tax rate changes.
You got it. It gives you options and control over your tax bill in retirement.
Okay, so based on the material, is there a general rule of thumb for who might lean which way?
Yeah, the general guideline is often, if you're in a low tax bracket now, think 12%, maybe 15% federal, Roth is probably better. Lock in that low rate.
Okay,
If you're in a high tax bracket now, say 28% or higher, traditional often looks more attractive for that immediate deduction, assuming you might be in a lower bracket later.
and the middle ground, like the 22, 24% brackets.
That's where it gets fuzzier and where that tax diversification idea, contributing some to both if possible, really makes sense. Hedge your bets.
Makes sense. Are there other factors besides just tax brackets?
Yeah, a couple of other things. One nice feature of Roth accounts is that your contributions, the money you put in, not the earnings, can generally be withdrawn tax-free and penalty-free before retirement if you face a major emergency. That offers some flexibility.
Interesting.
Traditional accounts, on the other hand, have required minimum distributions or RMDs. Starting at age 73 currently, you have to start taking money out whether you need it or not and pay taxes on it. Roth IRAs don't have RMDs for the original owner.
Oh,
And one last thought.
yeah.
If you expect to be very financially successful and actually be in a higher tax bracket in retirement than you are now, then paying the tax now via Roth might still be better, even if your current bracket isn't super low. You're prepaying the tax on potentially huge future growth.
Lots to consider there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we've talked employer plans, we've talked traditional versus Roth within those. What if my job doesn't offer a plan? Or what if I've maxed out my 401k but want to save even more?
That's where individual retirement accounts, or IRAs, come into play. These are accounts that you open yourself, totally separate from your employer.
Okay, an individual account.
Right. And guess what? They come in the same two main flavors we just discussed, traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs.
Ah, so the same tax logic applies. Pre-tax for traditional, after-tax for Roth.
Exactly the same fundamental tax difference. Traditional IRA contributions might be tax deductible now, leading to taxable withdrawals later. Roth IRA contributions are never deductible now, but qualified withdrawals later are tax-free.
Okay. Is the contribution limit different from a 401k?
Yes, it's much lower for IRAs. For 2025, the maximum you can contribute across all your IRAs, traditional and Roth combined, is $7,000 per year if you're under age 50.
Okay, $7,000.
And if you're 50 or older, there's a catch-up contribution allowed, an extra $1,000, bringing your total IRA limit to $8,000 per year.
Got it. Now, I remember hearing there are income limits with IRAs, especially Roth.
Yes, that's a key difference from most 401ks. Your ability to contribute directly to a Roth IRA is limited based on your income.
How does that work?
It's based on your modified adjusted gross income, or MGI. For 2025, if you're a single filer, the ability to contribute starts phasing out if your MGI is $146,000, and it's completely eliminated if your MGI is above $161,000.
So high earners might not be able to use a Roth IRA directly?
Correct. The limits are higher for married couples filing jointly. The phase-out range for 2025 is $230,000 to $240,000 MGI.
Okay. And does income affect the traditional IRA too? I thought you said the contribution will be deductible.
It does, but in a different way. It affects the deductibility if you are also covered by a retirement plan at work, like a 401k.
Okay, so if I have a 401k at work.
Then your ability to take a tax deduction for your traditional IRA contribution is also limited by your income. For single filers in 2025 covered by a workplace plan, that deduction starts phasing out at $77,000 MAGI and is gone completely above $87,000 MGI.
So someone making good money with a 401k might contribute to a traditional IRA, but not get that upfront tax break.
Exactly. They can still make what's called a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA. The money grows tax-deferred, but there was no upfront deduction. It gets a bit more complex tracking that at tax time.
So IRAs are great extra tools, but you definitely need to check those income rules to see exactly what you qualify for, especially regarding Roth contributions and traditional deductions.
Precisely. They offer valuable flexibility and control, great for supplementing a workplace plan or if you don't have one. But yeah, the income rules add a layer of complexity compared to just contributing to a standard 401k.
Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. The power of getting started early, the mechanics of workplace plans like 401k, that crucial Roth versus traditional tax decision, and now how IRAs fit into the picture. It feels like a pretty solid toolkit for building retirement savings today.
It really is. And understanding these pieces, how they fit together, that's the key. Especially, like we said at the start, because that older system, the pension system, just isn't the reality for most people anymore.
Yeah, it feels like we've come full circle back to that point. The landscape really has shifted.
Massively. Knowing how to use these tools, the 401k match, the tax advantages, the IRA options, it's not just helpful, it's pretty much essential for building your own financial security in retirement now.
Okay, so this has been a real deep dive into these critical retirement planning tools. We saw just how powerful starting early can be thanks to compounding. We unpacked employer plans, that 401k, hitting hard on getting that employer match, and those helpful auto features. We wrestled with that big tax decision, traditional versus Roth, pay taxes now or pay taxes later. And we saw how IRAs provide those important individual savings avenues, but you got to watch the income rules.
Yeah, and look, it might feel like a lot of acronyms and rules when you first encounter it, but understanding these core ideas really does put you in the driver's seat.
Right.
The responsibility for funding retirement has largely shifted to you, the individual. But the good news is, the tools and the knowledge to actually succeed are out there. The key is using what's available, grab that match, and making smart choices about taxes based on where you are now and where you think you might be heading.
It's about being intentional, right? Not just hoping it works out, but actively building that future security.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to consider. Given how much impact starting early has and how valuable things like the match and tax strategies are, what's one small, concrete step you could take, maybe even this week, to better align what you're doing today with where you want to be financially in the long run?